Does Britain still exist? Or is it being dismantled to make way for something else? Obviously, there are some square miles of dry land off the coast of mainland Europe still going by the name of Britain. Britain is still on the map. As a for instance, if you pay a people smuggler some thousands of bucks and say, "Take me to Britain," he will know where you mean and will transport you to a rendezvous with a British Border Force vessel or an RNLI lifeboat financed by donations from the British public, and either will cheerfully ferry you to the British coast, where you will be collected and taken to a fine hotel and given food, money and access to all the facilities a person might need, all of it paid for by taxes from those same British people. Millions of British people who are themselves painfully short of money and struggling to feed themselves and heat their homes. Those taxes are predicted to rise so that more of our money might be flushed out of Britain, away from the British, towards those deemed more deserving. But does that name, Britain, still define a sovereign country in any meaningful sense? The crisis on the south coast is only part of a bigger problem. These islands of ours offer free accommodation, 3 meals a day and cash, no questions asked, plus more chance of bagging a council house than anyone actually born here. Who wouldn't jump at the chance? But the setting aside of the border to make way for thousands of new arrivals every day is only a symptom of a homegrown sickness. Ironically, in the aftermath of all the damage done to the personal immune systems of millions, billions of people worldwide by the policies and medical practices of the past 2 years, Britain herself has been similarly weakened deep down. Instead of keeping the country safe and well, those entities supposed to function like the nation's immune system, Parliament, the institutions of state, the civil service, the judiciary, the police, have turned on the British people instead, and upon the structures that ought to protect us from harm. Like someone suffering from autoimmune disease, our national immune system is now destroying the healthy cells, which is to say us, the British people. Any country is a fiction when you get right down to it. For continued existence, every country depends on enough of the people who happen to occupy that space sharing the same idea about where they live. If enough people believe in the existence of Britain and are prepared to give their all to maintain Britain, then Britain prevails. If the day comes when too many have forgotten what Britain is, or simply don't care if she exists or not, then Britain is no more. The dry land will still be there, the roads and buildings, but that is all. This is the time of remembrance, when we claim to honour the ancestors who gave the last full measure of devotion to protect this country and see it handed on intact to future generations. When you go home, tell them of us and say, "For your tomorrow, we gave our today." Those words are graven in stone all over this country. Today's leaders have no loyalty to Britain or the British, none that I can see. Maybe a few still feel some loyalty, but are just too demoralised or scared to declare it, far less to do anything about it. Whatever loyalties the rest of them have, on both sides of the aisle, they lie elsewhere, not honestly declared. For one thing, they're loyal to those entities that do make all the meaningful decisions, which is to say the markets and the banks. It was the markets that wanted rid of Liz Truss and Kwasi Kwarteng, and so they went. Now we have Rishi Sunak, the Prime Minister none of us voted for and therefore don't want. Like Jeremy Hunt, blatantly the market's choice of Chancellor, his loyalties lie anywhere but with Britain and the British. Imagine how both men drool at the prospect of a central bank digital currency and the surveillance society it will force upon us. If we are led by figures committed to objectives that are against our interests, are we even obliged to obey their diktats when they are undoing everything Britain has been? Are the needs and wants of the British people to be set aside in favour of the needs and wants of everyone else, anyone else in the world? I ask those questions sincerely. Since we're talking about the markets and the banks, we might as well focus on what it's all about, all of this upset and upheaval, which is control. Control of the people via control of our money. At a time when British people are struggling in ways that have been unknown to millions for a very long time, a vast mountain of the money they pay in tax is being shovelled elsewhere. For the crime of having been born in the home of the Industrial Revolution that changed the world for the better and lifted billions of people out of poverty, this latest generation of British people is to be punished, diminished, made dependent upon a state that openly despises us and treats us with contempt. Setting aside, for example, the fact that China has pumped out more pollution in the last 8 years than Britain managed in the 220 years since the Industrial Revolution began, more of the taxes paid by British people might be handed to the developing world, perhaps China included, who knows, as our penance for making it possible for 8 billion people to be alive in the world at the same time. Courtesy of cheap, efficient energy, plentiful food and all the benefits born of the modern medicine and technology our ancestors' efforts made possible. The fire kindled here more than 200 years ago made life better, made life possible for billions, and in return we are to be mugged in broad daylight, our wallets emptied and our hard-earned cash handed to anyone around the world that wants it. A good whack of China's recent output of CO2 came from burning coal to make our wind turbines, and the rest of the vanity projects that let our remotely controlled leaders spout lies about cutting emissions. But hey-ho, never let the facts get in the way of a good global scam.